Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Bob Ferguson, Attorney General for the state of Washington. And tech support scams are one of the most pervasive kinds of fraud occurring across our nation. Doug Shadell, who's to my right, who you'll be hearing from shortly, I think he says in our press release that they are reaching epidemic proportions, which I think is an accurate summary. Generally, these are schemes where someone claims to offer tech support for you, but misleads consumers about the services provided or even whether there's a problem to begin with. An estimated 71,000 Washingtonians lose $33 million annually to tech support scams. Nationwide, we estimate more than 3 million Americans annually suffer more than $1 billion in losses from tech support scams. It's like walking into a car repair shop. Consumers rely on experts to tell them what's under the hood. While the tactics vary, the goal is the same: to gain access to your computer and ultimately your money. Through our complaint process and investigative work, we have identified violations of law by iYogi, one of the biggest independent tech support providers in the world. I'm here to announce my office has filed a lawsuit against iYogi and its president, Vishal Dar, for using deception and scare tactics to pressure consumers into buying unneeded tech support services. We have reason to believe that hundreds, if not thousands, of Washingtonians are affected by this scam. The lawsuit was filed today in King County Superior Court. We allege unfair and deceptive business practices, violations of Washington State's consumer protection laws, as well as misrepresenting the need for certain software, which is a violation of Washington State's Computer Spyware Act. I want to introduce the folks who I'm joined here with. First, to my left, Brad Smith, who of course is Microsoft's president and chief legal officer. To my right, I mentioned Doug Shadell. We have a close partnership with the AARP. He's AARP's state director. And then to my left, Dan Davies is joined by Andrea Allegret. They're the two attorneys in our office, the assistant attorneys general, who are handling this particular case. And they're going to be able to help answer any questions you have about the specific litigation itself. Then after the remarks from myself and Brad and Doug, we'll open up to any questions. I'll give a brief overview of our lawsuit before I turn it over to Brad. iYogi is based out of New York. They have over 5,000 employees. It has call centers in India and in Maine. It is one of the biggest independent tech support providers in the world. They serve more than 3 million customers. They provide subscription-based remote support for personal technological devices such as computers and tablets. This includes computer diagnostic and repairs, security protection, performance optimization, antivirus software sales, that type of thing. Here's essentially how their scam works. I'll lay it out. First, they have online ads. I think we have those online ads that are sort of right between here. Gives you an example. In online ads, iYogi associates itself with major computer software companies such as Microsoft, Apple, and HP. When consumers call iYogi, the representative claims to provide tech support services on behalf of whatever company the customer inquires about. After gaining remote access to the consumer's computer, iYogi identifies complex-looking files and claims these infected files harm the computer. iYogi misleads the consumer into believing that he or she must download iYogi's diagnostic software to fully identify these alleged computer problems. iYogi's software, by design, flashes a variety of warning signs, reporting a critical computer status, for example, regardless of the computer's health. iYogi's representative again falsely claims that malware or computer viruses have infected the consumer's computer. This type of diagnostic software designed to alarm a consumer is often referred to as scareware. Once iYogi has alarmed the consumer, the representative proceeds to aggressively sell a tech support plan to fix these non-existent problems. It can be 1 year for $140, 5 years for $379. iYogi claims the plans cover tech support needs for the length of the contract. Next, iYogi sometimes indicates that a computer does not have antivirus software and tries to sell the consumer iYogi's antivirus product for up to $80. They do this even if an existing antivirus program is already installed in your computer. iYogi's also told consumers they need to update to Windows 10 or it will harm the computer, which it will not. iYogi uses this scare tactic to force the consumer into buying Windows 10 for $80, even though Microsoft offers the upgrade for free. As part of our investigation, we had an employee from our office pose as a consumer and contact iYogi. She had a brand new computer. And in testing iYogi's method, her findings documented precisely the type of unlawful activities I just outlined regarding their practices. The goal of our lawsuit, number one, we intend to stop iYogi's deceptive business practices. Number two, we want to recover restitution for Washingtonians who've been victimized. Number three, we can seek up to $2,000 in civil penalties for each violation of Washington State's Consumer Protection Act and $100,000 per violation of our Computer Spyware Act. So from our standpoint, as an office, and my standpoint as Attorney General, this is a very common scheme. It's a very common fraud that's inflicted upon Washingtonians and people all across our country. And I'm proud that our team has taken this step against an entity that's really, unfortunately, leading the way in many respects on this scam. It's common. You're going to hear that from Brad and from Doug, and then we'll look forward to hearing your questions. So Brad, will you take it up next?
Sure. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And first and foremost, I want to thank Attorney General Bob Ferguson and the team here at the Washington State Attorney General's office. I also want to thank the AARP. This is important work, and we at Microsoft were pleased to bring this evidence and offer our assistance to the State Attorney General's office. The reality is that tech scams have become a scourge on the internet. Over 3 million people across the country every year are now losing roughly $1.5 billion as a result of these scams. These are innocent people who either are calling for help or who are picking up the phone in the evening and finding on the other end of the line someone who is posing as an employee of a reputable company. But these individuals are not on the phone to help consumers. Instead, they're on the phone to take consumers' money. Over the last 18 months, we at Microsoft have received over 180,000 customer support calls in the United States. We've had over 10,000 of our customers report that they've lost their money to these kinds of scams. They need to stop. And the only way to make them stop is through effective legal action like the lawsuit that is being filed today. Washington State and the Washington State Attorney General's office are pioneers in these kinds of law enforcement efforts that are going to be needed in increasing number and by other law enforcement officials across the country. But we believe that with this kind of action, it will be possible to turn what today is a money-making business into a money-losing business instead. And when that day arrives, this will stop, and people will not be defrauded, and they will not be interrupted at home in the evening with people trying to separate them from their wallets. That is the goal that all of us have in mind. People buy computers and they buy software to do useful things with their time, not to suffer this kind of problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. And next, Doug Shadell.
Well, I too want to commend the Attorney General's office and Microsoft for taking this action today. You know, AARP, both locally here and nationally, spends a lot of time doing consumer education for our members, especially on fraud. But in the last couple of years, we have seen this huge rise in the number of callers calling about this technology scam that we've been describing today that the AG is taking action against. So much so that earlier this year, these three organizations you see up here launched a cyber safety campaign in the state of Washington. We traveled all over the state giving consumer education, warning folks about this. Attorney General Ferguson was at these meetings. Microsoft experts were at the meetings. We have never held events that had more in attendance. We had to turn people away. And when we got to these events, what we heard was, I'm getting these scary messages on my computer, I'm getting calls, it worries me. And you know, there's enough to be worried about in this world we live in now without having this added to them. And I would be the first to say I've spent my whole life in trying to educate consumers about the frauds that are out there, but consumer education will only go so far. This kind of action today is absolutely necessary to send a message to those bad actors that we're just not going to put up with it, that our seniors are too important, and the computer and its relationship with seniors is also too important to let this happen. So thanks again to the Attorney General's Office and Microsoft for taking this action.
And so before I turn to your questions, I just want to reinforce, I meet with Doug and with Brad both on a regular basis, and I think one of our very first meetings, Brad, I recall talking about this issue as one of the things that was on our agenda from shortly after I became Attorney General, and the impact on consumers and on entities like Microsoft is significant for these cases. Microsoft's been a wonderful partner on this particular litigation and getting information that's allowed us to move forward, and appreciate my team taking the leadership role on this case as well. And with that, we're happy to take any questions that any of you might have.
So is your goal really to put them out of business? Is there anything legitimate about, you're talking about their practices,
Yes.
but is there at their core some legitimate business going on?
Want to be clear, what we want to stop is their illegitimate business practice, right? And so they have, that said, their software itself, right? The scareware, that's a part of their operation, right? That needs to be eliminated. So their illegitimate business practices, which we think are extensive, in our view, need to be ended.
And then I was wondering if Microsoft has sued in the past, since they're using your name or associating themselves with your name.
We certainly do consider that kind of option. This case is a case filed by the State Attorney General. We've worked with the Federal Trade Commission in Washington. We'll consider civil cases on our own, but we think that the most effective action is actually action by government authorities.
And then I was wondering what makes this, I mean, it seems that since we've had computers or since the internet, there have been tech scams. Where does this fit on that line? I mean, is it worse, how much worse is it? Is it, what's different about this?
Just be clear in terms of iYogi specifically, or
Well, yeah, this lawsuit.
or the scam itself, the tech support scam itself.
The scam, yeah.
I guess I'll let the others can speak to as well. Well, one thing I just want to mention briefly is, I think from my perspective, one thing that's different about it is the breadth of it, the impact it has on so many individuals. Like you heard Brad say, hey, more than 3 million folks nationwide, more than $1 billion in lost dollars for consumers around our country. So I think the breadth of the scam, I think. The other thing is, we think it's underreported. A lot of folks don't even realize they've been the victim of a scam. They think they've been helped. They see that critical sign flashing. They pay their $540 or $149 for assistance. They think that solved a problem. Why wouldn't they think that? They see that on their computer. It looks legitimate. So we believe it's actually underreported as well. So those would be two things that I see, but Brad and Doug, feel free to add to that.
I'd say two things. First, this particular company is the 5th most complained about company by our customers to our customer support phone lines. So it's a significant problem in the eyes of our customers. Second, I do think this problem has become worse in the last few years. You see it in the numbers, you see it in the earlier comment. I think it is fair to say that this has become something of an epidemic. I think most of us have now experienced receiving these phone calls. I have received them at home. I have received calls by people claiming to work for Microsoft. I have explained to them that I am very skeptical that they work for Microsoft. I had a conversation with one individual asking if he had a mother. And when he said yes, I said, what I would suggest you do is you call your mother tonight and tell her that you decided to quit your job so you can earn an honest living instead. But the worst thing about this in many respects is that these callers are preying on people's fears at a moment when their guard is down, when they're home in the evening, for example. And I do think the problem is underreported at times because people are even embarrassed later on that they fell into the trap. And people shouldn't have to worry about this. And hence, I think this kind of enforcement action is really quite important.
I just want to be clear, it sounds like you really are equating this business highlighted in Fortune magazine as one of the hottest 25 people in business in Asia, on the same line as the tech support callers that are clear scams? Either one of you.
I'll stop.
Go ahead.
Short answer, yes. I mean, look, my view is simple on these things. A scam is a scam, right? I don't care if you're a sophisticated business doing it or you're a fly-by-night organization engaging in a scam. If you're deceiving Washingtonians, if you're engaging in deceptive business practices, it's a scam. And this one's a methodical one, right? That's why I try to take care of kind of point by point go through. Again, we had someone from our office with a brand new computer call up iYogi, and those 5 points I mentioned, exactly those things were mentioned. The alerts, you've got a problem, brand new computer. So I call that a scam, and it's a methodical one, right? Their own software is scareware, that's what it is. So that is my perspective on it,
Were people able to get their money back when they called and protested and complained?
Whether you guys know whether or not
They have given some refunds.
Come right to the microphone, yeah.
iYogi, I understand, has given some refunds to customers that complain, but it's not, certainly not every customer, and it's certainly not willfully given out by them.
The one other thing I would add is no one is suggesting that the entirety of this business consists of this activity. As Attorney General Ferguson said, this is about a practice, a particular business practice. And no one is making any statements about the entirety of the practices of a particular business. It's about this business practice.
But isn't it this business practice that's made them successful? I mean, how do you take away that practice and still have successful business, it sounds like?
I was gonna say, I think one can have a legitimate tech support business, right? If you have a real problem with your computer, you'd have tech support for that is legitimate. The way they, in many cases, engage in getting that business, persuading you to sign up for them is deceptive and is unlawful under Washington state law.
But it might be why they're such a successful company.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to speak to sort of the breadth or the size, how much of their success is based on what we think is deceptive practice. That said, the way they approach this is methodical, right? It's on multiple levels in our complaint, outlines deceptive practices down the line throughout that interaction that a consumer has.
Have they responded at all? Did you have any contact with them
Have we had any contact?
leading up to this?
No.
About
I should ask Allison, do we have anyone on the line, by the way? So it's just perfect timing. Hey, so I just was about to ask if anyone is on the line who would like to ask a question. And if you don't mind just introducing yourself, we will do our best to identify our voices when we answer your question.
Yes, question. This is Charles Harrison. I'm with El Mundo Communications, Spanish language newspaper in the state. My question is iYogi, you mentioned they're a New York corporation, I believe with operations in Maine and India. Are they a subsidiary of another foreign corporation, or is it U.S.?
Do you want to identify yourself and answer?
We are bringing a lawsuit against iYogi Incorporated, which is part of a global iYogi network of corporations that operate in 11 countries.
Any other questions? Go right ahead.
And the parent corporation is in which one of those 11 countries, if I might ask?
Is it iYogi? We believe that iYogi Limited may be the parent corporation. It's not entirely clear within the umbrella. There tends to be a bit of mixing between the companies.
where is that
I see.
located?
Thank you.
This is G with the Associated Press here in Seattle. This may have been addressed earlier, but I couldn't quite hear. iYogi has been drawing these complaints for years now. Do we know if any similar actions have been taken against them in other states or by other regulators?
This is Bob. My team can help answer this question. My recollection from our conversation earlier, I think there had been like an individual, for example, may have brought a lawsuit. I'm not aware, my team will correct me, or Brad or Doug will correct me, but I don't believe the state AG, for example, has brought litigation against iYogi, and my team, we believe that's correct. And so my understanding is, again, 2 actions, there were 2 legal actions brought and settled, at least one by individual, I believe. Does that sound right?
Yes, there was a class.
Microphone, maybe, yeah.
There was a class action was filed against iYogi in New York approximately 2 years ago. The individual that was the lead class complainant settled that lawsuit in August.
And frankly, this is Bob again. Frankly, we were discussing this before the press conference. And I think Brad alluded to this. I think there need to be more cops on the beat when it comes to this particular practice. So I look forward to reaching out to my colleagues around the country and having more cops on the beat, more enforcement of what really is a scam of significant proportions. I think will be necessary to as Brad mentioned, move it from a money-making business to a money-losing business.
I have a question from the consumer's perspective. I mean, if I get a call out of the blue saying there's a problem with my computer, I know that's a scam, but let's say I do have a problem with my computer. How can I be certain I am speaking to someone with Microsoft tech support, for example, and would they take over your computer to fix it? I mean, that's a possibility, right? So how do you know that it's legitimate who you're talking to?
Well, I think the good news is if you are a consumer and you have a problem with your computer, you can choose who you go to talk to. If you want, you can take your machine, you can make an appointment, for example, at a Microsoft retail store. We have multiple stores here in the metropolitan Seattle area, for example, and you know exactly where you are and you know exactly who you're talking to. If you want to call a customer support line, you can look up a phone number on the internet and you can choose who to call. Call a number that is associated with a company that you trust. And so I think that that's a way for consumers to take power into their own hands rather than just answer the phone and talk to whomever is on the other end of the line.
Any other questions from anyone on the line before we, and we'll be available afterwards as well for questions. Any other questions from those on the line? If not, I want to thank everybody for your interest. Thanks to Doug, of course, and to Brad. We would not be able to bring a case like this without the partnerships that we have. And AARP and Microsoft are two key partners we have. I think we've all spoken to that, but it really is important. These investigations are time consuming, they're complex, they take resources, and no one actor can do that on its own. It's really a team effort. So we appreciate everybody's work. Thanks for being here, and we're available afterwards for one-on-one questions if you have them. Thanks very much.